Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a fast, moving and deeply alarming situation unfolding across Russia, where chaos, panic, and confusion have swept through millions after reports that newly developed Flamingo missiles struck major strategic locations. This sudden escalation has triggered shockwaves across the country and left people questioning how such an attack unfolded, what these missiles are capable of, and what this means for the region. Moving forward, in this video we are breaking down the events, reactions on the ground, the military implications, and what experts believe could come next. The situation is tense, the information is evolving, and the uncertainty is unlike anything Russia has faced in recent years. Let's get into it. The first wave of panic began when loud explosions were heard across several major Russian cities, catching civilians off guard. Social media flooded instantly with videos showing fireballs rising into the night sky, buildings shaking, and residents rushing into underground shelters. The initial confusion made it unclear whether this was an accident, a military drill gone wrong, or a targeted strike. But within minutes, unofficial military channels confirmed what many feared. The explosions were caused by Flamingo-class missiles, weapons previously considered experimental and not yet deployed in large numbers. The realization that these missiles were now being used in live strikes triggered widespread fear, especially because most people had never heard of Flamingo missiles before. As fear spread, local authorities attempted to issue calming statements, but they failed to slow the wave of panic. Long lines formed outside grocery stores, gas stations, and banks. People feared losing access to supplies, transportation, and communication if further strikes followed. In many cities, parents rushed to schools and daycare centers to pick up their children, while others locked themselves inside their homes. Traffic jams built up rapidly as thousands tried to leave urban areas. The sudden pressure on highways caused complete gridlock, leaving many trapped inside their cars, unable to move forward or return home. The atmosphere in Russia changed within a single hour, turning familiar streets into scenes of frenzied evacuation. Reports soon emerged that the Flamingo missiles hit critical infrastructure sites, including power distribution centers, communication hubs, and transit terminals. These targets were not random. They seemed designed to disrupt strategic functions, weaken Russian defenses, and generate maximum psychological impact. The moment the power grids failed in several regions, the darkness intensified the fear. Electricity outages meant communication networks faltered, leaving millions disconnected from emergency alerts and official guidance. In the absence of reliable information, rumors multiplied, spreading faster than the authorities could respond. Military experts began analyzing the nature of the Flamingo missiles, noting their unusual flight patterns and strike precision. The missiles appeared to maneuver unpredictably, making them difficult for standard Russian missile defense systems to intercept. This created a second wave of concern. If Russia's defense systems could not stop Flamingo missiles, how many more strikes could follow? The uncertainty grew heavier as more footage surfaced, showing fires burning out of control at various strike locations. Emergency responders struggled to contain the flames, especially in industrial zones where explosions triggered secondary fires. For many residents, the sight of towering smoke columns felt like a scene from a war zone, not their own neighborhoods. As news spread internationally, analysts pointed out that this event might represent a turning point in the regional military balance. The Flamingo missile system, still largely undocumented publicly, was believed to combine stealth technology with advanced targeting capabilities. Its ability to evade radar and hit with high accuracy raised serious concerns about escalation. If Russia was now vulnerable to such a weapon, then every strategic assumption in the region could shift overnight. Politicians and diplomats scrambled to assess the situation, while foreign media began broadcasting real-time updates that only amplified the sense of crisis. Inside Russia, hospitals and emergency centers were pushed beyond capacity. Injured civilians, firefighters, and first responders filled emergency rooms. Many hospitals experienced temporary power shortages, forcing staff to operate with backup generators. Families frantically searched for missing relatives, calling emergency hotlines that were overwhelmed with traffic. Officials urged citizens to stay indoors and avoid spreading unverified information, but this advice did little to reduce the overall panic. Every new explosion, real or rumored, triggered fresh waves of fear. In multiple cities, supermarkets were stripped bare as residents grabbed whatever essentials they could find. At the same time, the Russian government held closed-door emergency meetings to determine the scale of the attack and prepare countermeasures. Officials debated whether these strikes signaled the start of a larger coordinated offensive or whether they were isolated incidents designed to send a message. The uncertainty was compounded by the lack of clarity regarding how many Flamingo missiles existed and who controlled them. If a new military actor or coalition had access to such advanced weapons, Russia's entire strategic landscape was at risk. The credibility of Russia's defense infrastructure was suddenly under scrutiny, not only by its citizens, but also by the world. International experts also highlighted the psychological impact of the strikes. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, Flamingo missiles were engineered to generate large amounts of visual shock, bright flames, high-impact bursts, and intense heat signatures. This made the scenes terrifying for civilians witnessing them in real time. The fear was not only about physical destruction, but also about the unknown capabilities of a missile that seemed to defy conventional defense technology. The name Flamingo suddenly trended worldwide, with millions searching to understand what had just entered modern warfare. Meanwhile, economic markets reacted sharply. Oil prices surged within hours as investors feared regional instability could disrupt exports. Russian stock markets experienced immediate drops, with companies tied to energy, logistics, and telecommunications hit especially hard. The economic shock added another layer of anxiety for a population already stressed by the physical threat. Business owners shuttered their shops, while banks limited withdrawals to prevent financial collapse. For ordinary citizens, the combination of physical danger and economic uncertainty felt overwhelming. Government messaging attempted to reassure the public, stating that additional air defenses were being activated and response teams were being deployed nationwide. But trust in official statements was weakened by years of contradictory messaging, leading many to rely instead on private channels, online groups, and foreign media. This created competing narratives, some exaggerated and others completely fabricated. In the chaos, truth became difficult to separate from speculation. Psychological stress began spreading as quickly as physical damage. As night turned to morning, cities hit by the Flamingo missiles seemed transformed. Streets once filled with everyday activity now lay silent, littered with debris and ash. Fire crews continued battling large blazes, while police cordoned off damaged zones. In some areas, residents ventured out cautiously, assessing damage to their homes and neighborhoods. Many described the scene as surreal, like waking up in a nightmare version of their city. The smell of smoke filled the air. People wore masks not out of health rules, but because the air quality had plummeted. Military officials remained tight-lipped, releasing only limited details about the number of missiles used, the identity of the attackers, and the effectiveness of defense responses. This silence deepened the sense of crisis. Even seasoned analysts said they had never seen such a sudden and extreme impact from a single weapons system. The Flamingo's speed, stealth, and destructive power made it unlike anything previously deployed in the region. For Russia, the implications were severe. If they could not detect or intercept these missiles, then every strategic facility across the country was vulnerable. As rescue operations continued, civilians shared personal stories of survival families hiding in basements, neighbors helping each other escape burning buildings, and strangers offering shelter to those displaced by the blasts. These stories highlighted the human side of the crisis. In the face of chaos, cooperation became essential. Volunteers distributed water and blankets, while local organizations opened temporary shelters for those who had lost their homes. Despite the uncertainty, people tried to maintain some sense of unity. Outside Russia, political leaders issued urgent statements calling for restraint, fearing that retaliation could trigger a broader conflict. Diplomats attempted to open communication channels, urging all parties to avoid further escalation. Experts warned that if the Flamingo missile strikes were part of a larger strategy, the region could be entering a dangerous new phase. Some analysts speculated that the missiles were meant to test Russia's defenses, while others believed they were designed to send a political warning. But without concrete information, the world could only watch anxiously. As the day progressed, new intelligence suggested that the strikes were coordinated and deliberately timed to coincide with vulnerability windows in Russia's defense grid. This raised questions about whether the attackers had inside knowledge or external intelligence support. Either possibility was troubling. If Russia's systems were compromised, its security apparatus faced a long and complex recovery. Rebuilding public trust would be equally challenging, especially after so many civilians witnessed the chaos firsthand. In affected regions, power restoration crews worked around the clock to restore electricity, but progress was slow. Damaged substations and transmission lines required extensive repairs, and in some areas, fires continued to burn near critical infrastructure. Residents prepared for extended outages by gathering firewood, candles, and alternative cooking sources. With heating systems offline, nighttime temperatures became an additional concern. Officials distributed emergency generators to hospitals and critical facilities, but supplies were limited. In the aftermath of the strikes, psychological trauma began surfacing among civilians. Many reported difficulty sleeping, constant anxiety, and fear of additional attacks. Parents struggled to comfort their children, who were confused and frightened by the explosions and sudden upheaval. Mental health professionals issued guidelines on how to cope with the stress, but access to services remained limited due to infrastructure disruptions. As the situation continued to evolve, one thing became clear: this was not an isolated event. Russia now faced the reality that an adversary possessed advanced weapons capable of punching through its defenses and creating nationwide panic. The world watched closely to see how Russia would respond and whether this crisis would mark the beginning of a larger conflict. Experts warned that if tensions continued to rise, other nations could be drawn into the situation, turning a single night of chaos into a much broader geopolitical confrontation. For now, the priority remained stabilizing the affected regions, restoring communication networks, and providing relief to civilians. But the long-term implications of the Flamingo missile strikes would shape defense strategies, diplomatic relations, and global security for years to come. Russia's image of strength had been shaken, and its people faced a new reality, a threat that bypassed traditional defenses and created fear on a scale not seen in decades. As updates continue to emerge, the world remains on edge. What happened in these strikes will leave a lasting mark on Russia's strategic thinking and on the global understanding of modern warfare. The crisis has revealed how quickly technology can change the balance of power and how unprepared even major nations can be for new forms of attack. The story is still unfolding, and the next steps taken by Russia and the international community will determine whether this moment becomes a turning point in history or the spark for something far greater. This situation continues to evolve by the hour, and we will keep following it closely. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay safe.